I looked up the last time we talked on the podcast. It's been 5 months. A lot has happened in 5 months for you. I can't keep I can't keep track of all your Instagram pages, man.
Well, the cool thing is that I think now you officially had me with every single page I ever had. So yeah, that's a good thing.
It's kind of weird. You don't really post anything that I would deem as that spicy. I mean, you do, but not like some of these pages that are like, openly talking about like transgenderism or
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
other like, you're not posting about abortion or any of that shit. And it's just
Uh,
it's weird.
the thing is with like deletions on Instagram. I mentioned this last time, but it has absolutely nothing to do with what you post. I mean, sure, if you post in a similar line in a very specific fashion or maybe touch on specific things, your chances of getting like dinged are a little higher. But essentially, like, that's not why you get banned. Like, people get banned all the time because this entire process is completely automated. Recently I had like a I saw it like on Reddit that some guy posted a photo of a cactus, and his photo got deleted because he violated terms and agreements. So the process is like completely random, and no one knows what causes it. So like, you can get deleted any second now. It's just that unpredictable.
Yeah, and certain people just get unlucky with it. One thing in particular that I've been thinking about a lot lately is just social media in general. Like
Hmm.
I'm this close to canceling or deleting my Instagram
Hmm.
and just not dealing with it anymore. One point in particular that I've been thinking about is the fact that everything on Instagram, there's just too much of it, and it's all just these like little bite-sized pieces that you don't actually take in the information. When it comes to like fitness content or stuff that like or you know, um philosophy and stuff like that, you need like long form content to actually break things down. And I'm getting to the point now where it's like, well, if I want to do this podcast and if I want to make videos and whatnot, like Instagram is just it takes a lot of effort and you don't really get much in return as a content creator. And like the algorithms seem to be super fucked. And I don't know. What do you think about it?
The thing, you touched on something interesting, and that is this perplexity to like post bit-sized information. And this is something that I've noticed as well, and I kind of have my own tinfoil conspiracy theory on that. uh, did we cut off? Oh no, we
Nope.
didn't.
We're good.
So I have my tinfoil conspiracy theory on that, in the sense that I believe that the average person is getting dumbed down more and more every single day. This kind of explains the popularization of like reels and TikToks, and the fact that like you probably heard about this. The fact that like you have like 2 seconds to grab someone's attention, and
Mm.
like only like 10 more seconds like to keep it, because the average person's attention span is that of a goldfish. So and you're right in the sense that Instagram is problematic, because one of the things it forces you to do is post content all the time, and it has to be trendy, it has to be short form, it has to be bit sized, easily digestible, and as you mentioned, that takes a lot of time. And and some things aren't just like, they aren't the form at which Instagram forces you to deliver that sort of information just isn't adequate. I mean, sure, some things like in fitness you can generally get away with in posting like how should I say, in a short format, but things like you mentioned, like philosophy and things like that, really not. I mean, I don't know if you saw this post that I made recently, and it's kind of really annoyed me. It legitimately irritated me. There was like some guy, and you've probably seen like these pages like spawning everywhere. These like hustle guru, motivation business
Yeah, I'm
pages.
getting sick of that shit. I'm so
Yeah, yeah,
fucking
yeah.
sick of that shit.
Well, and one of the things that I've saw, and I honestly believe that the guy had good intentions. Like, I objectively speaking believe that, but it's a prime example of what I'm saying. Like, and what you mentioned, like this bit size information, people just want to be delivered something trendy, something easily digestible, something it confirms their own personal bias. And basically, the guy said, and I shit you not, he said something in the form of, if you want to be elite in society, all you have to do is like train for 20 minutes, read for 20 minutes, what was that, write for 20 minutes, and something else. It's like, what gets done in 20 minutes? Like, like I can warm up for 20 minutes for a heavy squat.
Yeah.
uh, it depends like on what you are reading. Like, if you're reading, let's say, something a bit more dense, if you're reading, I don't know, maybe Spengler, or maybe you're reading Schopenhauer or something like that. Like in 20 minutes, you might only read 10 pages and still not have a good grasp of what you're doing. And like in 20 minutes, you probably cannot write 1,000 words. Not 1,000 words, but 1,000 characters. So, but it forces this idea, and it pushes this idea, which is kind of cute, kind of trendy. We just need to do 20 minutes and we're good to go. But in reality, that's kind of lowballing people and kind of giving them a false sense of accomplishment, because at the end of the day, you're not doing anything, but you effectively believe that you have done something extraordinary, when in reality that just isn't the case.
That's 99% of the self-development space I've noticed recently. It's like this it's like self-development it's like a masturbatory thing where they think it's like if I read a self-help book, it's almost like I'm achieving something. And I fell for that trap like in my early 20s, you know, when I was really trying to like get my shit together. And then eventually I just said, like, dude, this, like, most of these self-help gurus are just full of shit. And a lot of them have gotten successful selling self-help. Isn't that a weird paradox? It's like they're not actually necessarily successful with something other than being successful inside the self-help industry, which is like fucked if you think about it.
If it's basically a snake oil tactic, and it's essentially they're repeating the same things over and over again because of the social media spectrum that we're all in. It just the problem with like the social media age at which we live in, and I don't want to. I want to play the devil's advocate, because I'm the first person who actually, in spite of the fact that Instagram deleted me like twice or something like that, I still believe that it's an incredibly useful tool. But then at the end of the day, as I mentioned, Instagram and most other social media forces you to pump content all the time. And the problem with that is just like, there isn't much that you can say all the time which is going to be different. So you end up repeating yourself all the time. And that basically ends up forcing you to get into this niche and just kind of push your beliefs upon someone for this very, how should I say, very flawed perspective. And yeah, this like and especially like this self-development stuff, I see it now even getting popular, like where I'm from in Serbia. Like I remember 3 years ago when I was writing about discipline and like this idea that you got to really put in the work, and like the amount of success you get is directly proportionate to the amount of work that you put in. I mean, I'm obviously, I didn't write about anything new. I didn't discover like hot water, as we say it here. I'm just repeating what is essential truth for thousands of years. But a couple of years ago in Serbia, people would say like, who is this like stuck up guy, is like wannabe philosopher or something like that. But now I literally see people who work in like bars for basically just above average salary, who are like all of a sudden some motivational speakers and gurus. And you see, it's like, as you mentioned, like a masturbatory chamber where everyone is just stroking their own ego, how everyone is perfect and excellent and extraordinary, when in reality that just isn't the case.
Mm. Well, it's weird. I was talking about this. Jack Donovan was just on the podcast, or we just recorded a podcast, and it's weird. We were talking about the fact that everyone wants to be a life coach.
Yeah.
Isn't that a weird thing? Like, we've all been brainwashed into thinking like, unless we become an online influencer, we're not successful. When in reality, like, the world won't go around if everyone is an IG influencer. You know, like, some people just need to be plumbers. Some people just need to be electricians, right?
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. And like, dude, you can still train. You can still do all the amazing shit you want to do in life, but you don't necessarily need to make your money doing something that's like out of this world. Like, you don't need to be fucking Andrew Tate or something. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah. Well, everyone, it's like this. Everyone wants to be a hustler, or everyone wants to be a leader. I mean, Power Aesthetic has a really good podcast on this topic of leadership, and the fact that like everyone wants to be a leader and everyone wants to be in a position of power, but in reality, not everyone is suited for that. And chances are, not just because you aren't suited for that doesn't mean you're a bad person or you're a subpar character or individual, but it's just not, as you mentioned, like not everyone has those characteristics. And even if, and maybe they don't want to do that, as you mentioned, some people just need to be plumbers or electricians, and there is nothing wrong in that, because I value someone who is really good at plumbing or electricity or maybe electronics a lot more than some wishy-washy wannabe life coach who doesn't have any skills under his belt.
Boom.
I mentioned this, like a buddy of mine's brother. we trained in the same facility. We kind of built our home. Well, technically, it's his home gym. People think it's mine. The place where I train, me and my buddy, basically, we bought the equipment together, but it's in his garage. And his brother helped us out quite a bit to build that up. And like the interesting thing about this guy, he's like an IT guy. He's a programmer, developer. I mean, he codes, but I think he's 2 years younger than me. So he is 23, 24. Dude knows plumbing. He knows electricity. He knows construction. He knows everything, on spite of the fact of being a really good developer. So, and at a certain point, I almost like, I wasn't jealous, but I was like envious of him. It was like, this dude had like, and no one taught him this. He just learned it on his own. He was interested. Like he did most of the wiring and electricity in the garage at which we trained to kind of set up the lighting. He was kind of the guy who did all the kind of the brutish construction work around us to make sure that everything is stable, bolting in everything and everything like that. And the dude is only 23. And at the point, I kind of asked myself, this guy is essentially worth a lot more than me. Like objectively speaking, he has a bigger skill set than me. And if something actually went bad and something happened, and if we were forced to live in some sort of a society which those things are again valuable again, I would want him by my side. I wouldn't want maybe another person who's like me. Because at the end of the day, who gives a shit if I can write a really good paragraph, or maybe I can coach someone on how to increase his squat if I don't know how to do if I don't know how to get basic plumbing. So,
yeah, when the apocalypse hits, no one cares about how many Instagram followers you have.
Definitely, yeah.
But I have 100,000 Instagram followers.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but you're gonna get our group fucking killed.
Yeah, you're gonna get sepsis because you don't know how to purify your water. But yeah,
that's pretty funny, man. No, those are all great points. Stuff that I've been thinking about, and just thinking about, like, there's the excuse where it's like, well, I need Instagram to start a business, or I need it for my business. And like a guy like you, that's viable, because I'm assuming that you get most of your clients off Instagram. Yeah. So there you go. But for me, it's like, well, I'm not really like, I already have like a source of income, and I've got other things going on. So it's like, is there any value of me having, an Instagram other than to like just make another outlet for the podcast? But I was thinking to myself, you brought up the fact that people are repeating stuff over and over again because Instagram makes you do that. So you almost become a slave to Instagram in a way. And not only that, but there's people that I follow that I enjoyed their content at first, but if they just keep posting the same shit over and over again, it dilutes the brand. And I start to see it as negative. And I'm like, oh, this guy just annoys me now. Do you get that a little bit? Like, I fell into that trap, and I was like, I don't even want to fucking post anything anymore. I'm just
it's a sketchy thing because Instagram is a double-edged sword. I remember, maybe like you were kind of a similar age, so we kind of remember that before, in order to get advertising for your business or something like that, you'd either have to pay for a newspaper, or maybe you have to pay for your for a television to kind of do a bit on you or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you would have been very, very happy if a couple thousand people saw that. You would be like, okay, that's very, very impressive. But in reality, now you can make a post and a couple thousand people might see you. And the kind of the funny thing is that might be even more efficacious for your development of your business than even the things that we did before. So Instagram is kind of a double-edged sword in the sense that for certain businesses, it's absolutely essential. You just cannot go behind it. Then again, here is that problem. We're essentially all slaves to something. Like, if you are not self-employed, you obviously have a boss who is giving you your salary and who is kind of dictating how your life develops in a certain sense. But people get this illusion when they're like self-employed that no one is above them. Like, in reality, when I got deleted, that's a pretty from Instagram. That's a pretty important hit on my finances, because essentially now the people that get to see my posts have declined by like 1/3 or 2/3, and that might result in a couple €100 of money lost. So and the problem is that Instagram is completely unpredictable with that kind of stuff. So one day you might be perfectly fine, you might be rolling in cash and everything is smooth. The next day you're deleted, and although the financial hit is not going to be instant, because in my case at least, clients still are kind of on a different platform and everything is semi independent. But then again, clients come and go, and if you don't end up refreshing your pool of clients, you're inevitably going to run out of business. So even I've been starting to think about a potential, like, I run kind of 2 businesses now, and I've been thinking about a potential third one that's going to be completely devoid of social media, like in the zone, because that's like one of the problems of like doing this, like doing a public thing like online and everything like that, because you are going to be susceptible to some things.
Yeah.
So it's a problematic thing, definitely. And I also, something that I said multiple times, the primary reason I have my Instagram is for my business. And if I didn't have my business, I wouldn't want to say I wouldn't use Instagram at all, but
It'd be
probably like
yeah.
significantly less.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. Do you mind getting into the business side of things a little bit? Are you
Yeah,
cool with that?
totally.
Yeah, because I'm curious. Cause I'm a pretty financially focused dude right now, and
Hmm.
that's definitely my focus. Like I own a company with my brother that has nothing to do with anything that I talk about on my page. Like
Yeah, I saw that video.
it's a moving and delivery company. And it is quite successful. Like me and him are making good money doing it. But it's this whole idea of like your
Sorry for
passion.
interrupting you, but
Yeah.
I gotta say this: you're probably making more money than a guy with 20,000 followers on Instagram doing self help,
Oh, I'm sure I am. Yeah.
just
But
by
well,
moving things.
it depends. It depends. But the thing about it is it's this whole idea of like pursuing your passion, like this wishy-washy millennial bullshit.
Hmm.
And to a certain extent, like I don't think someone should go work in a fucking coal mine for 40 years and hate their life, or work in some
Definitely.
bullshit office job. But at the end of the day, it's like you got to kind of, sometimes if you make your passion, like it doesn't matter what the fuck I'm doing for money.
Yeah.
I'm always going to train. I'm always going
Yeah.
to be interested in exploring ideas, like these kinds of like ideas around masculinity or self-development, and the not wishy-washy kind. But sometimes you just got to do things that aren't necessarily like you're super stoked on, but they just make you money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like how do you kind of view that? Like, do you feel like now that your passion, like you're obviously super passionate about training, but do you feel like now that's like your career, that it's affected your love for it in any way?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's not as enjoyable as before,
Mhm.
because it gets affected by one way or another. The thing was, when you're doing something as a job, and when you're doing something for passion, is when you're doing things because you objectively like them. Uh, you don't have deadlines. You don't have like certain requirements. You just do it because you like them, and kind of that's what pushes you forward. When you're doing things as a career, maybe you would do things which you normally wouldn't.
Mm.
That's one of the problems. Now, regarding business and kind of what you mentioned, this idea that everyone should do what they love, I would say no. I like
Damn.
be, being a coach is obviously, I've been doing it officially like for 4 years. I'm not new to this. I've been like,
Yeah.
with all things considered, like I'm considered like a generally semi successful business, because I'm kept afloat and my business went up in the past 4 years. But I did things previously which I didn't like. Well, I got my first job when I was like 17. And I was doing something like construction. So I didn't like that at all, but the money was good. And because the money was good, it allowed me to do things which I liked. Then I worked like in a photography studio. Then I worked in like a US company as like something like customer support and like technical support, like on the field. Then I did like I was short term an English teacher. I believe it or not, I hated that job. I hated that job, not because I generally like kids. I really do. But that's not the job for me. I
Yeah.
cannot be like, hey, look at this. And then the cool thing of when I was an English teacher, because I didn't look like a conventional English teacher, the kids kind of found me interesting.
Yeah.
So that
You're
was
like,
that was kind of
who's this Jack guy with the tattoos, man?
yeah. It was actually very interesting, because they always brought up my tattoos and like kind of my beard and everything like that, and they found it completely interesting. So that was cool, but that wasn't a job for me. But the reason why I say this is, oftentimes, like, at the end of the day, you're doing a job to make money.
Yeah.
And you can only make money successfully if, one, you market yourself effectively, and number two, you know what you're doing. The problem is that, like, if you really like something, do you really know how to do it effectively? Often tell people, just because you're a good lifter or maybe you're really strong, that doesn't necessarily mean you would make a good coach.
Mm.
This is something that people make a mistake all the time. They love training themselves, and then they think they will love training someone else. Like, when I started training people, I thought, oh, I was just gonna get a generic client who's been training for 2 or 3 years, and then I kind of just hammer in their macros, hammering in their programming, and everything is fine. But to know what happens when, how do you approach that situation when, like, a 45-year-old man who's like maybe 150 pounds more overweight, who's never squatted in his life, who never trained a single sport in his life, and who never went to the gym before he contacted you, how can you coach that guy? Because everything is new to him. And secondly, he isn't young. Well, he isn't old, but I mean, he isn't like a 17-year-old kid, and he isn't super athletic. That is essentially when you get to filter out if you really like to do that or not. And secondly, as I mentioned, it's kind of like, will you be able to make a career out of that? It's not all careers are really good at making money. I believe that you can effectively make money from pretty much everything nowadays, and we have seen that by the amount of audiobooks that get sold, which basically just rehash and repeat Jordan Peterson. But but essentially, like, a lot of businesses, you cannot make a lot of money without a lot of experience in it. So you want to make sure that you're doing something that will basically allow you to make money, so that you have the time and energy to be devoted to the things you love. That's essentially how it works.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's a lot. Like, yeah, that's something where I've been thinking about that, because I feel like I'm kind of in a position where if I wanted to like risk it all and like go all in on like trying to try to monetize a podcast or do these
Mm-hmm.
other things, there's a part of me that's just like, man, I don't even know if I want to be a part of that world,
Definitely.
because
There is.
there's a lot of negative shit on the internet, and the internet's a very like divisive place nowadays.
Yeah, it's sketchy. It's, how should I say? As you mentioned, you, first of all, you don't know if that's something that you want to do, especially long term.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, people forget this fact, but the internet is a living organism. It develops, it evolves, it grows, it shrinks. So it's, who's to say that? I mean, podcasts have really exploded in the last maybe 5 or 6 years.
Mm.
And I don't think they're going to go down by the amount of podcasts that are present. I don't think that's going to happen. But who's to say that that's going to be a viable source of income in like the next 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. And kind of dumping all of your eggs in that one basket might be a little bit tricky, and might
Yeah.
not be the best. And that isn't just for podcasts, but I mean, like, for really most businesses. I probably wouldn't recommend that. The best, I always recommend something. I always give this general recommendation to people who want to start a business with something they love. I told people when I first started coaching people officially, first 6 months I didn't make a single euro. I coach people for free. Because I wanted to show people that I know what I'm talking about. And then eventually clients started picking up, finances started going up, etc. So I always tell people, like, if you're perfectly fine with doing the thing that you like without making a single dime out of it, then maybe you need to get invested into it. But if you want to start a business and start making money in the first 2 months, probably a very bad idea. Like, start something on the side, see if you like it, see if, ideally, the best businesses are the ones that you enjoy doing and which don't feel like work.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can spend like time which you would normally devote to like going out and maybe doing something a little bit more casual, if you can devote that time to maybe doing something for your business and it doesn't feel like work, that's the best case scenario. But if not, probably not for you.
Yeah, and there's really nothing wrong with just taking a more traditional or safer path, like getting a trade or just doing something that's not as sketchy.
One of the things that I mention quite a lot is that as I mentioned, I've been doing this for some time now. I'm 25. I'm going to turn 26 in October. So I've been kind of self-employed per se for like the past 4-ish years. And I can tell you, thinking about it now, if I was like, again, 20, 22, would I really choose the same career path? I don't know, because when you are self-employed, um, one of the things that you have to give up on is personal security. Like this idea, because if you're working, let's say I'm going to use a US perspective. If you're making like $1,000, I don't know if that's good or bad. I think that's somewhere in between. If you're making $1,000 a week in like a regular job in the United States, that's 4K that you know that you're going to have each month. Generally speaking, if you don't fuck up or do something really bad, you know you have 4K every month.
Yeah.
When you run your own business, sure, 1 month you get 4K, another month you might get 8K, but maybe 1 month you might go in a minus, you might go in a deficit. So is that something that you can hurdle? Is it something that you can hurdle to witness your business going down, or maybe buy things which are completely unrelated to you? I mean, a buddy of mine has a website in which he writes articles and kind of information on mobile phones and kind of how to fix certain errors and things like that. Like a Google update wiped off like 40% of his income, completely something out of his control. And is that something that you can maybe control? It also, every single dime you make is completely dependent on you. It's not passive at all. Like most businesses aren't passive, even the ones that claim they are. You have to do something all the time. I always tell people, I practically in these 4 years, I never had a vacation. Like never had like a vacation. I had days where I didn't maybe reply to clients and things of that nature, but like at general vacation, when you aren't thinking about business, doing something about the business, kind of making some plans, never. So that's something that you got to be comfortable with, and that's something that most people aren't comfortable with. And I tell, and there is nothing wrong about that. Like it doesn't make you less comparable if you're a person who prefers working for someone and maybe being a really good worker than just trying to fake being self-employed and kind of loving it, because it's a completely different thing. And that's why most people aren't self-employed, because it's most of the times it's actually not worth it.
Yeah. But well, I can attest to that. You know, I've been self-employed for I guess a year and a half now with this company. Me and my brother owning this company, and yeah, it's everything's on you, and you take it home with you, right? You can't.
Yeah.
You think about oh shit, I'm checking my bank account constantly, and like before COVID hit, I was actually in a significant amount of debt, and then once like I saw COVID coming and all the shit, and I just like
even better.
Yeah, I totally like took care, got my financial house in order, got out of debt, started stacking cash. And I have this whole perspective on money now. It's very like, I don't know. Do you know who Dave Ramsey is by chance? It's like this he's like this financial guy. I should actually send him to you. He just like really gives like people, he kind of wakes up millennials to a lot of the bullshit around money. Like he's totally against going into debt. He's all about budgeting, and like, he's like, stop buying you don't need to buy a fucking $50,000 car and finance it and shit like that. Like he's very practical. He just gives like practical, like dad advice financially. He's like the Jordan
financial dad.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson of finances, I guess.
Okay. I like it. I'm gonna check it out.
So yeah, I'll send you a link to his stuff. But yeah, so I followed his stuff and just like started stacking up money, got an emergency fund, and now we got this business going where we're actually making solid income, especially like up here in Canada. It's pretty solid. And yeah, so I stress about money a lot. Like the more I have, the more I'm just like, well, this is like, I almost feel like traumatized from the time that I was in debt. So now it's like, I don't, even though I'm making good money, I still drive like a pretty like shitty car. I keep all my expenses down.
Same.
But yeah, man, it's like, you don't necessarily need to make a ton of money. You just need to be smart with it, and you need to plan for the long term.
It's kind of like sorry for interrupting you, but like some of the best business advice I've ever heard about money is like you can approach it in two ways. You're either going to spend less or you're going to make more, but you can never do only one. So you can't just indefinitely work more and stack more cash, because that doesn't work like that. It's like linear progression. You cannot just add 5 pounds on a squat every week for like indefinitely. Chances are like you want to
work more.
yeah, exactly. So you just got to utilize different tactics, like different periodization schemes for making money. But basically, yeah, it is like that. You kind of want to be, how should you say, I mentioned something also when COVID officially hit. Now every country was kind of different. Over here, looking at it now from a perspective, it was actually pretty good compared to like a lot of other places. It wasn't that bad. Like we had like curfew and everything like that, but like it didn't last significantly long. And now when you see like places like Canada, which like 2.5 years were under lockdown, that was pretty intense. But one of the things that really baffled me was the fact that when I read in the first 3 months of lockdowns, like a ridiculous number, like 20% or 30% of all businesses went bankrupt. And something that legitimately kind of confused me is like, how can you operate a business which
Yeah,
goes bankrupt after 3 months of no work?
that's
Like
fun.
I can understand it. I can understand if you run like a multi-million-dollar corporation and like every day you do not work, you lose millions. That's understandable. But if you're doing like a small to low branch industry and you don't make a ton of money, how do you not have that? But then I realized people like to flex on the material possessions in reality, which they don't have. It's like the newest thing is like flexing a Rolex, like
Mhm,
or if you're a Serb buying a Mercedes.
mhm.
But that's like a ridiculous proposal because you essentially like there is like this theory that I've heard that in reality, like a significant only like what was that 60% of the money you earn goes to you, 20% goes to savings, 20% goes to investing. Might
Yeah,
be a little bit again wishy-washy, but again the rule of thumb is good. You want to
mhm,
set up a certain amount of money that you can spare every month to put on the side. It doesn't matter how low it is, but
yeah,
one of the things that forces you and kind of builds upon you is this idea that you got to save, because if you can very easily get drunk on success. Like 1 month you're making a ton of money and you can justify to yourself, well, maybe if I make this financial decision, which generally speaking isn't very how should I
yeah,
say low intensity, and I'm perfectly fine with that 1 month later, then maybe I can do it more often and more often. But that you're essentially going in a sloppy policy where you're gonna justify to yourself making financial decisions that probably shouldn't happen in the first place.
mhm.
Like material possessions. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy who believes that you should never, how should I say, treat yourself. Like you gotta know why you are making money. I'm a
Yeah,
firm believer that you got to show yourself the fruits of your labor. I mean,
yeah,
I got my sleeve and like on my chest blasted up, like in one of the periods where I made the most amount of money,
yeah,
because I kind of like it was kind of, so to say, I've made a rule for myself that a specific amount of money that I make, and if I make that, a certain amount can go towards tattooing, and it kind of tattoos kind of for me at least represented a part of like overcoming that. It's kind of like, okay, I came upon that point where I can actually afford this, because although tattoos in Serbia have become, generally speaking, fairly popular, it's not even that uncommon to see people with like blast it up completely. But still,
mhm,
it's kind of like a trickier place. You're every time you're covered more and more, you're kind of closing more and more doors. It's
mhm.
not as extreme as like 30 years ago, but I knew, for instance, by the fact that even though I can kind of cover this up most of the times, but by the fact how I look, I'm bald, I'm reasonably muscular, beard, and I'm covered in like skulls and things like that. I know that I'm shutting off a lot of doors. So inevitably, by making that decision, I kind of knew I was going in the right direction by having the financial stability behind me. So you should earn it in
Yeah,
reality.
yeah. They call those kinds of tattoos
Job stopper.
job stoppers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember
I s-
back in the day, like I used to listen to Blink 182 and Travis Barker would talk about that. The drummer, he's like, what you do is if you're fully dedicated to something, you get neck tattoos. So you
yeah.
can't, you're unemployable. So now you have to make it.
Yeah, it's kind of always funny when I said, like, when I open up my third company and if it's successful, I'm getting like a job stopper, like knuckles and neck.
Oh,
I said
dude,
it. Yeah, yeah. I'm going.
that's some pussy shit. You need to get like a fucking something right here.
Yeah, yeah. I need to. What was it? I need to get a teardrop.
It should just say war boss.
Yeah. And wait, and I gotta get barbed wire like on my
Yeah.
scalp. Yeah, so I'm not doing that. But I like the idea.
I'm
I
sure
like the
your
idea of like war boss here.
and then you can go to the family dinner. I'm sure your parents will be stoked. Your whole family.
Oh
will be
yeah, they
stoked.
love these. They love these. But yeah, it's kind of like always funny when you approach like these people who it's like always the same exact story when someone gets like fully blasted, and like there's gonna be some guy somewhere who's gonna say, "Oh, I bet you're gonna have a real fun time looking for a job." Like motherfucker, I don't know if you saw the prices last time, but tattoos are expensive. So if that guy managed to get blasted up with good tattoos, he spent a lot of money. So you should ask yourself where he got that money.
Yeah,
Probably not because he was working 9 to 5.
yeah, like I have a one sleeve kind of similar to what you got, but I don't even have it on my chest or anything. It's just on my arm.
Lame.
And it's it's pretty yeah, fuck. It's pretty expensive. And
Yeah.
after I got this last one, I had to get a few things touched up. I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I want to get any more tattoos just because one, they do fucking hurt. And I don't care what anyone says.
They do.
They do fucking hurt, man. Like I remember this last tattoo because he just had to go over so many things and like he had to keep going over the same spot with shading and shit. I'm like, dude, I was fucking sweating. And I remember he had like fucking Rick and Morty on the TV or some fucking cartoon. And he's
getting an anxiety attack.
Yeah, he's fucking laughing and shit. He's like, "You okay? You okay?" And I'm just like trying to be fucking tough. And I'm like, dude, like you know that feeling where like you're sweating and it's like you feel like, it's painful, man.
It's when I got my first tattoo when I was 20, and it's kind of funny because I told myself I kind of knew the idea of my tattoo when I was like 16, and I told myself on my 20th birthday, if I don't change the idea of if like in 4 years I don't change what I want to get tattooed, where do I want to get tattooed, and who's gonna tattoo me, I'm gonna get tattooed for my 20th birthday. That's like the first tattoo I ever got. So lo and behold, I go for my 20th birthday and get tattooed, and it's on my back. And it's not that big, it's like this big. And I remember getting a tattoo, I was like, dude, like this ain't fun. This ain't fun. Like, and I remember asking myself, like, how the fuck do people get blasted up? Like this fucking hurts.
Yeah, dude.
So actually the one on my back, I don't know if it was because the first one and I was kind of new to it, or maybe the tattoo artist, or maybe the region. I don't know. I remember not liking it at all. Also, I fucking hated this one here. Because it's close.
Spot.
Yeah, it's close to your armpit, and yeah. You came up short. You came up short on purpose.
I didn't quite get it right there.
No, I got it. Like as you can see, it's like up to here. Yeah. So, and the problem is like one of the things. First of all, the pain. Because it's really painful.
I'm getting fucking goosebumps thinking about how bad it hurts. I'm like,
it hurts. But then another problem most people forget is the fact that the tattoo artist had to put me in a fucking arm bar, like to get me tattooed. So I had to go like this, like completely. And I remember my arm, shoulder, and elbow got numb in the first 15 seconds. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a blast.
Fuck, at least it's numb. Maybe that's a little better.
No, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. Like when you're like completely fucking uncomfortable and like this, it wasn't pleasant at all. So one of the reasons I'm never gonna get my second arm tattooed, like no, I'm not getting in that position again. But I have some general ideas. I want to tattoo my left quad, maybe even soon. Maybe a couple of other things. But again, I reached the point where now I raised the level at which I want to be at to earn my tattoo. If that makes sense, I need to earn a lot more money to justify it.
You can't just make frivolous purchases unless you're like in a really good spot.
I mean, I'm okay, but I need to be more okay.
Yeah, that's how I am, man. Even the more like I went on a canoe trip and everybody was like, a few of my buddies were like buying these my cousin bought like $80 fucking water shoes, and I went to Walmart and got a pair of $10 water shoes. Like that's the kind of shit I'm on. It's like, nah, these will do $10. Or like work pants and work shorts. I'll just fucking go to Walmart and buy like $15 work shorts.
Yeah, when it comes to that, actually, it's kind of an interesting discussion. I have a mixed feeling on that. I believe that things which, generally speaking, you need, and things which you will, on a long-term basis, you're going to use, I actually fully endorse the idea of like spending more. For instance, things like boots, especially like hiking boots, jackets, maybe some sort of equipment, I absolutely advise people to like spend the money. I know it's like expensive. I know you will have to save on it, but you will appreciate it even more, and it's gonna last 10 times longer. But certain things, like I'm like mega cheap when it comes to like sneakers for the gym. I've used the same ones for the past 40 years.
Yeah.
They were like $50. Wouldn't spend a cent more, like unless I'm using my own clothing, which I manufacture. I like buy the cheapest stuff available, like I or like use shirts which are like 3 years old and would beat up completely. Like I'm not spending money on that. But
Yeah.
certain things which are I believe that are completely worth it should be you should completely spend your money on. Again, I going on the tattoos. I know it's generally speaking when you look for them, it's a complete waste of money because it goes for nothing. But again, it's something that means to me and I like it, and it's kind of shows the fruits of your labor. So some things I'm perfectly fine with spending quite a lot of money on, but most other things, like if it's completely generic and unnecessary, like whatever.
Like for me, when I buy certain clothes and like, yeah, like you're talking about like shoes and boots and stuff, I do usually spend like, I've spent a couple $100 on boots before, and they've just lasted for so long. It's like when I make a purchase like that, I really think it out. I'm like, you know what? No, this is a good purchase. It kind of depends on what I'm buying though. If I'm like out in the woods and like if I lose an $80 water shoe, I'll be pretty pissed. But if I lose $10 water shoes, it's like
exactly. Exactly. You also have to think about like, is this something that you would be okay with losing?
Like I bought a GoPro for $500 before a canoe trip because I wanted.
And you were sweating. In the
canoe.
Yeah.
I had it strapped to my fucking shit so it wouldn't fall off.
So tight you almost got like so that you almost got like a heartburn. But yeah, I understand that. It's again one of the things which I like. I make a relatively decent amount of money, and like one of the things that I mentioned this a couple of times, Serbs are famous for is their affinity towards cars. I never understood how I legitimately know people who buy cars which are 5 times worth what they make on a yearly level.
Yeah.
I don't know how they can afford it. I swear to God, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they put
finance
gas.
it. They just finance it. Yeah.
I don't know, but like I'm the kind of person, like I'm not into cars. Like I don't find them interesting. So when I bought my I bought my second car recently. It's like I just want it to be like something that's not gonna break. It looks relatively decent, which is newish, and which is gonna get me from point A to point B. Because even if something happens, God forbid, I don't wanna go and sweat over the fact that I maybe have to spend a couple $100 on like repairs and things like that, because that's not a financial hit I want to take. It's for some, and I can understand some people who like it, who objectively speaking like it, because everyone has like those certain things. I spent like $250 on like a pair of cowboy boots, which were custom made for me, because that's it for me. But like I'm not gonna spend like a lot of money on cars. Like no, generally speaking, that's not my thing.
No, I'm the same way. I mean, if I keep doing what I'm doing and I get to a point where I can spend like,
definitely
decent chunk of change on something that I'm not embarrassed to drive, that's,
yeah,
because I've definitely driven pretty shitty cars my whole life, just because I'm the same. Like I don't necessarily care about what I look like to people. I'd rather have money in my bank account.
I always it's not like what I posted about recently. It's like, you don't want to be the guy who spends hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars on material possessions and clothing, but like doesn't spend a nickel on his own body. Like I'm perfectly fine coming off of coming off of a shitty car, but looking like an absolute freak. Then like looking like mashed potatoes, but coming out of a Mercedes. Now I know some people would say actually most people don't care about that if you drive a nice car, but like I have my own reasons.
They still do.
They still do. They just don't want to admit it.
Yeah. The ultimate would be to do both.
Yeah,
jacked as fuck coming out of a nice car.
Exactly.
Now, one thing I wanted to talk about with you was the thing you posted, and it's kind of was big news for a while I guess last week, was the like what all the evil right wingers have been saying for a while is like depression doesn't actually exist as a disease. Dude, I've been saying that for so long. It's like that's just a bunch of fucking bullshit, dude. Like these people that'll And every time I would meet someone in my life who had depression or like uh, like the amount of women that I've when I was like single and dating, I would meet so many women who are on SSRIs, and
You're gonna
I would
offend so many people
yeah,
now.
just fucking let's go off on this shit right now because like um and dudes, I met tons of dudes on
Same.
that
Same.
had depression as well. I'm not just picking on women. I'm just saying in general. And then you look at these people these how these people live, and it's like, well, no
Oh yeah.
fucking shit. I would
Who would
too.
have known?
So
Who
what
would
do
have
you think
known?
what do you think about all that? Because that's shit we've all been saying for a while.
The thing with depression, I remember the heat that I got into, and I'm not gonna mention people because I'm not gonna be that asshole. But a couple of people I was associated with, I'm still cool with them up to this day. They all kind of told me like the same thing: depression, this, depression, that, and I kind of, and I'm gonna throw in a little bit of Serbian supremacy in the sense that these people live in very wealthy countries, like generally speaking, low crime, wealthy, secure, not a lot of things going down. And meanwhile, I said like something that doesn't like I remember saying this like when I was 20. Something that doesn't make sense for me is that how come depression is so high in like wealthy countries or countries which the quality of life is so high, but yet in places like where that isn't the case, depression is very low. And they always told me like, well, in low income countries, they just don't diagnose depression that often. It's like, okay, I mean, maybe, I don't know. And then I went through that rabbit hole which you mentioned. I kind of look into their lives, and the thing is, like, most of them have a job they hate. Most of them have they don't drink. That's a misconception. They have they have alcohol abuse problems.
Mhm.
Like, let's be real. Like, having a drink and saying, oh, he drinks, is like going on a weekend and having 2 beers and maybe a whiskey,
Yep.
or maybe on a Wednesday having a bottle of wine with someone. I
Yep.
don't know. That is drinking. But when you're smashed 3 days out of 4 in the week, 3 days out of 7 in the week, and when you completely forget what your name is twice a week, that's alcohol abuse. Second
Yep.
of all, I mean, thirdly, these people had opioid and narcotic addiction. Like, quite a lot of them are on Xanax. Quite a lot of them were on speed. I remember. It's like, and then to top it off, their social life was horrendous. They were all mostly like had problems with their parents, and it was funny because always the parents were to blame. They all had like very shitty friends. And I was like, huh, this is kind of interesting. I mean, and then at that point I realized, like, are you sure you have depression, which is like a chemical imbalance, or your life just sucks? And all of a sudden I got attracted a ton of heat, and people said that I was an idiot, senseless idiot, and I don't understand it, and this and that and whatnot. But then again, kind of like, I remember one thing that changed my perspective. I was like, when I watched years ago, like a Joe Rogan, of course I did, a Joe Rogan podcast with some guy, and I think he was actually British. And I think he had something like about depression, like he had like a book or something like that. And he gave an analogy of like a farmer in Cambodia, I think, or something like that. Basically, long story short, he had like he had animals in his farm, whatever. Like, he had a cow, and one time when he was herding his cow, he stepped on a landmine, and the landmine blew off his legs and killed the cow. So lo and behold, the guy survived, but he could develop like typical examples of depression. He didn't want to come out of bed. He was crying all the time. He had what basically he didn't know if he wanted to continue living. He was questioning everything, and they said, okay, instead of like prescribing medication to this man, why don't we buy him a new cow, and why don't we clear out and make sure this place is actually, it's safe now, which he can work at. It's not filled with mines. The man started working. He got prosthetics in his legs. He said he feels perfectly fine. So was it a chemical imbalance or traumatic traumatic life event? Because I do believe there is quite a bit of a difference. I believe that, and you can see that in PTSD and people who survive like serious conditions, like people who survived assault, war, disease. These people tend to sometimes develop PTSD, and I think that's often misinterpreted as depression, because they get a very traumatic experience and they completely need to be rewired. And lo and behold, that same thing happened to that man. But when he was slowly reintroduced to society and he felt like a decently functioning human being, he felt fine again. So, and you see the average person like nowadays, what the lifestyle they lead, and as you mentioned, it's kind of like, well, obviously you feel like shit. I mean, and I'm going to sound like a complete fucking asshole for saying that this is, it's not just a female problem, but I think females fall for this much easier than men.
Yeah.
It's like an average girl nowadays, and I don't care how fucked up this might sound, but girls like attention, lo and behold. Yep. And we have such an abundance of simps in our society, which are going to give them endless amounts of attention for absolutely no reason whatsoever. She can be a fucking 5 and she's going to get tons of attention. And what does the current narrative tell us? Oh, well, there is no such thing as like what fat shaming is completely unnecessary. It's perfectly fine to sell your body online for like $5. That's all perfectly fine. That's all work like everything else. And these girls get this attention, but it's fake. It's they get attention from someone. It's like virtual attention. It's like porn. You're not in it. You're not involved with it. An actual person isn't there. So you get some of the benefits from that, but you also get a lot of the negatives out of it. And no wonder, like, you're selling your naked photos to like random strangers for $5. You're eating like the biggest junk imaginable because now you can afford that junk. And like all of your friends justify that lifestyle, and lo and behold, you feel empty. Well, obviously, same thing is with guys. With guys, it's a completely different analogy. Guys, they do kind of something similar in the sense, but they revert mostly to drugs and alcohol. That's what I realized, and they revert to like this hookup culture. Cheyenne from Iblis Manifestation said something excellent, and that is that people are used to this like fast food culture when it comes to people. They just want to exchange and get something quick and get something without any emotional attachment and investment, and like to fill their basic appetite, and then they just leave. And that's what happens with guys. Hookup culture, things of that, and they feel empty. Well, obviously you're gonna feel empty because you like with nutrition, you satiated your base needs, which were there and which aren't gonna go away, but you pick the worst choices imaginable. Mm-hmm. Like it is really that simple.
Mm-hmm. Well, the hookup culture thing, I always get like, are you familiar with some of these like red pill communities and stuff like that?
Yes, I am, and I hate them.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's get into that because, I have a big problem with that. Like, obviously, like, feminism is toxic, right? So there's going to be an overcorrection, I guess like an overreaction, you could call it. Mm-hmm. And at first, when I stumbled on these red pill guys, I was like, oh, wow, like this makes sense. Like, you know, and I agree with a fair chunk of what they have to say. But then it's like, I agree. It's like, I agree. And then it just fucking goes way over here. And I'm like Andrew Tate. Like, I don't want to drop too many.
I can't stand him. Like,
I don't want to drop too many names. I guess I'll say,
no, he's a cunt.
Like the Andrew Tate thing is like, it's like, I agree with some of what he says. It's
like, some of it is cool.
And then he'll say shit like, you need to program your bitch. It's like, oh, so you are a misogynist. You are a sexist.
It is.
Yeah, like, it's like, bro, like I'll say something like people will consider what I say misogynistic if I say something like, I think men should lead their relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I 100% like, I think men are the leaders of relationships and women are the followers. And that isn't to be like women are fucking, just inferior and must fall. But it's like, no, that's what feminine women want that. The kind of women I want to be with, like that dynamic.
Yeah, and I would go a step further, and I would say that most women also prefer that, and the ones who say they don't aren't happy in the relationship.
Yes,
like no chick wants to be with a bitch, unless that she's into that. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. And she's probably kind of questionable. It's probably
well, it's not something I would get into personally. So
she's probably got purple hair if that's the case.
she's probably gonna beat your ass. But yeah, no. The thing with Andrew Tate and this kind of like, first of all, we're gonna now touch on everything. First, the feminism thing. I'm like, and I get shit in my relationship because of that. Because I often say I am not for any kind of feminism. Like, no. And they say, well, women should have the right to vote. They'll say, well, because they're women. Like, I wouldn't give 40% of men the ability to vote, because first of all, you have to pass an IQ test and then you vote. That's and just on the base of your gender you vote. That's completely ridiculous. But nevertheless, I say that feminism is complete garbage, because it turns men against women and it turns women against men. But one of the biggest things that I've seen not being addressed is the fact that some things they have a point. I'm gonna go on a limb and say some things the feminists say have a point. For instance, uh, this idea, we touched that there's like this thing about abortion and everything like that, and it's like, and I see this, and it's an objectively speaking correct analogy, and that is that all the blame is on women. Like, women are the ones who should take the blame for abortion, if they're pro-abortion, if they're against abortion, etc. But no one is going to say the fact that it takes two to tango. Like, it takes a guy to impregnate her. So you have to be that fucking asshole who's gonna impregnate the chick and say like, okay, now this is your problem. Like, that isn't cool. Second of all, this idea of, and I completely understand this. I mean, I think most girls aren't happy by doing that. But this idea of career over family, and the argument that I have heard is that, well, some girls, maybe they would want a family over a career, but what happens if the guy decides to leave them and now they have nothing?
Yeah.
Like, this is a very, and I can tell you from personal experience, not personal, but I can tell you from experience that I have had the opportunity to witness, is that this does happen. Girls who maybe get married a little bit too early, who don't have a particular skill set, who didn't work in a ton of jobs, marry someone, maybe they make a bad decision, they get children, and all of a sudden the guy decides to bang a random slut. So what can the girl now do? She has a family. If she decides to leave them, where is she gonna go? Like, she has kids and everything. Like, what would you do in that situation? So I can perfectly understand their analogy in that, because there is obviously, it's like a pendulum. The pendulum has swung completely in a different direction, to the point where, as you mentioned, people are overcorrecting. Obviously, we want to point out the bullshit, but we should also take some personal responsibility, not just with feminism, but with everything. Some things, they have a point, and that has to be taken into fruition. But with that being said, the solution is not anti-feminism in the sense that we're going to do the exact same thing but opposite to what they're doing. This is the guy that you mentioned. Oh, you got to control.
Yeah, like imagine if you heard a woman saying like, "Ladies, you need to program your man." It's like we'd all be like, "Shut the fuck up, you loser."
yeah.
But a lot of these guys are falling for this shit, man. Like, he's popular right now. People are
yeah. Well, that's the thing with guys like Andrew Tate. Like, I don't know much about him, but I've saw enough to make me dislike him. Like, it isn't I like certain people. I'm like, okay, maybe I don't agree with everything they say, but I generally support them. Again, I'm gonna drop a name, Solbra. I think his overall message isn't for me, but objectively speaking, I think he's genuine, and I think he's doing a good thing. Same thing about Jordan Peterson. Not everything he says I agree with, but I think he's doing generally a good message. Quite a few people. With Andrew Tate, I may be completely wrong, but from what I have seen, I don't like it. I don't think he's doing anything good, because his shtick is that he offers some good advice. Lift weights, make yourself presentable, etc., etc. But every time I see him, and he's, as far as I understood, a really successful kickboxer, which is completely respectable. Like, bow down, because kickboxing is a very, very, very demanding sport. But the thing that when I hear him speak, I hear someone who is insecure, a little bit cringy as well. Like, he has skin in the game. He has something to prove. When I hear him talk, I feel resentment, to the point where he reminds me of that guy who committed a school shooting because he was an incel. Who recorded something like in his car, like,
oh yeah.
He reminds me a lot like that. The only difference is that this guy didn't end up getting pussy, and Andrew Tate supposedly gets pussy that he pays. And that's kind of difference between those two, and why one guy shot up a school and the other guy didn't. And he's kind of going in a complete opposite direction of feminism, but by preaching the exact same thing that brought feminism into question. I actually mentioned this guy. recently, like on a post. He's like a prime example of these people who flee from the West and say like, "Oh, the West is just falling apart. It's full of degeneracy. It's not a place for men." And they go to some Eastern European country, and then they do the exact same thing, which made the West downfall. So basically, they get into corruption. They start promoting gambling and hookup culture and escorts and things of that, and they think they're doing something positive. And
Mhm.
guys are falling for that. Unfortunately, they think the solution to feminism is to be in the complete opposite route and go and kind of just be a complete asshole. But in reality, that's that's like a false god that it doesn't achieve anything.
I completely agree with you. And like that podcast I got. I'm just gonna name drop. I don't even care right now because some of these guys deserve to get it.
No,
Deserve to be.
they're scummy. They're scummy
But
and they deserve it.
like that Fresh and Fit podcast.
I've heard about it, but I
Yeah,
haven't
so
seen it. It seems horrendous.
it's terrible. But they talk about the same kind of shit. It's like I consider myself who like the whole like red pill thing. It's like I want to find truth. Like I
Yeah,
see patterns of behavior that we've been
yeah.
lied about when it comes to women and like sexual dynamics and whatnot. So it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I like the whole concept of the red pill, like even
Yeah,
like applying to like all aspects of life.
yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
but like a lot of these content creators are full of shit, and they'll say things like I guess Andrew Tate would be a good example. Like, oh, women today are degenerate and they're all sluts and blah blah blah. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to hook up with a bunch of fucking women as somehow solving it's like you're complaining about degeneracy, but then adding to the degeneracy. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? There's
I'm
no
gonna be
more.
against sluts, but I'm gonna be a male slut.
Yeah, and also there's like, I'm gonna create sluts in the process. Like I remember hearing him say shit like, I'm gonna fuck a girl and I'm gonna ruin her for all her future partners or something like that. Like
No, he
I'm gonna steal her soul after I fuck her. It's like, dude, what are you
exactly what I mentioned. When I hear him talk, I hear resentment. I hear someone who is rejected, who has a chip on his shoulder, and he wants to do damage. I'm telling you now, he is the type of person who's going to commit the type of personality that of the people who commit school shootings. These people who are completely resentful, they think the world is against them, and they have something to prove. They have to go and cause damage. It's a psycho behavior. It's legitimately a psychopathic behavior, and I think the people who buy into that are even bigger morons. Honestly, I don't know. Some things for me just seem, I don't know. They seem obvious, but I guess not for everyone. So it's difficult to say, but yeah, I objectively speaking really dislike him. I think he's doing more harm than good. I think he should be rejected, and also I find him annoying. I
Yeah.
find annoying the way he speaks. He can probably, like, someone is now gonna say, "Oh, but he can beat your ass up." Yeah, no shit, he's a professional kickboxer. Like, but at the end of the day, I'm probably gonna have a happier life than him.
Yeah.
So I really don't care.
Someone's gonna comment, "Oh, you guys are just blue pill simps."
Okay.
All right.
if I'm gonna be a sim,
Fucking
a sim,
just a couple beta males over here.
yeah, as beta as it gets.
It's kind of
But
funny
yeah.
too, because it's like the kind of niche that you're involved in and I'm involved with,
Mhm.
um, is kind of connected to Andrew Tate and that
Oh, yeah.
red pill community. Like a lot of the guys, like you'll see it being shared around in like our kind of small
Yeah.
little subculture, I guess you'd say, like the
Mhm.
masculine development space. Like what other things? I guess we'll probably wrap this up soon here because we're over the hour mark. But like, what are some other things that you see that kind of grind your gears in the masculine development space?
It's like, first of all, this is difficult to point out, but um, I have a belief that you shouldn't talk about things which you personally aren't experienced. Like, a lot of, I don't know if you notice this, but a lot of these pages are anonymous. Like, they create content and they are anonymous. Now, I perfectly understand that there is a specific tactical advantage to being anonymous and saying things online. Like, I can understand that. If you're gonna have a hot take and say maybe something spicy, and but you don't want to reap the consequences for it, I perfectly understand that in that reasoning why you want to be anonymous. That's okay. But when you are anonymous, how should I say, your advice is questionable. Like, are you really?
You have no
Do you really?
yeah, you have no skin in the game, and you also have no receipts of your success.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. So how can I know that you are that you know what you're talking about? Because a lot of these things that we mentioned aren't quantifiable. Like success is generally speaking isn't very quantifiable. Some people would quantify success with having a couple million in the bank account. Some people would quantify success as like being married at 25 and having 4 children. Some people like me would quantify success as having a 405 bench under 200 pounds. So success isn't very quantifiable. Same thing about respect. Same thing about kind of like your emotional sophistication and things of that nature. They aren't very quantifiable. So you can say things which might sound theoretically very, very cool, but do you have any experience of that in the real world? And most of these people don't. I've seen some people like, and I'm always question myself, who can take this guy's advice? Like, there was one page recently that cropped up on my mind, like had like 15,000 followers, like in some ridiculous engagement, and I opened up and the guy actually posted his photo, and it's literally a 17-year-old kid, like a skinny 17-year-old kid. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? Like, like I don't get this. But at the end of the day, that's everywhere. That's not just in masculinity or whatever. That's in coaching. Yesterday, I had like a guy who legitimately doesn't look like he lifts weight, like skinny kid who asked me if I want to come on board of his programming or something like that to help me get him more clients or something like that. I was like, what the fuck? Like I don't know. I mean, I can understand that maybe in certain aspects, maybe in the sense of bodybuilding and hypertrophy, strength training, sometimes maybe asking the most jacked, the strongest guy in the gym isn't the smartest idea, because oftentimes those people are genetically gifted and whatever they're gonna do is gonna work for them. But I mean, like, dude, if you're gonna talk about things like success and like emotional sophistication and like how to not suck in relationships, and you're like 17, like how many relationships did you have?
Yeah.
Like a couple of years ago, your mom stopped nursing you. Like
That's the problem with this whole obsession to, everybody's got to be a life coach.
yeah,
It's for me, like I've had to check myself a few times because like dude, I'm training, but like dude, I'm nowhere near at a level where I feel like I just can't believe like some of these people who like train for a year and then they're like, all right, I'm gonna teach you how to get jacked. It's like, well, dude, you're not even like maybe like down the line when I like maximize my genetic potential, or I hit a point where I'm like
yeah,
super fucking in shape. It's like, but I'm nowhere near that spot. So it's almost like I have this like this feeling where it's like, yeah, dude, like if someone asks me stuff, like sometimes people will approach me in the gym and ask me stuff and I'll tell them, but it's like, now pay me $20 because I'm a you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like at a certain point, it's hard to it's hard for me to like want to like even be like a fitness coach because I see all these people who are doing it better that I'm looking up to.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
if I were to be like, yeah, it's like I'll see someone who does such a good job. It's like, oh, you know what? You should listen to this guy right here because that's who I'm following.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
I'm almost at that point. It's like the best way that I can't offer any more value than like this guy right here. And I know that's kind of maybe like a self-defeating mindset, but like
The imposter syndrome.
the imposter syndrome is a thing. But like to a certain extent, you do have to be humble and understand that you're not at a like it's like yeah, sure. I crawled myself out of debt and I have a semi-successful business and I'm making good money and I got some savings, but that doesn't mean I'm going to go write a book on financial
Yeah,
freedom or
exactly.
something. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a certain level that you have to be at before you can start talking about shit or even giving relationship advice when like
Yeah,
you don't necessarily like I'm 29. I've had a few relationships. I'm in a relationship right now, but I don't have it all figured out. There's shit that I
yeah,
struggle with. It's like
yeah,
I'm not going to write an ebook on how to be a fucking alpha Chad who like maintains the frame in your relationship and shit like that. Like there's a lot of that going on. And it kind of disgusts me a little bit after a while. Like it gets gross.
At the end of the day, a lot of people are into it to make money. That's essentially how a lot of people approach it. They don't approach it to actually help people or share knowledge or share experience. They do it to make money. I kind of had a similar approach to you when I started coaching people. Is a sad in the sense that I didn't look up to local gym coaches and say, oh, I'm better than them. The guys who train people to use like Bosu ball squats and like some like autistic mobility work then like mostly stretching and call that a workout. Like that's like low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to get better than that. But if you're better than that, that doesn't mean that you're good. They just mean you're just slightly above horrible. So do you want to give advice when you're slightly above horrible? Probably not. So I know who I looked up to. I looked up to the coaches who are really, really doing the good work behind them, who know how to explain things. And at a certain point, everyone has that imposter syndrome. And I think that's a good thing because it keeps you accountable. It keeps you makes you kind of self-check yourself, makes you
Yeah.
kind of self-check and kind of keeps you grounded. But at the end of the day, it's kind of the results that speak for themselves. Like I'm at the first time to a point where, since we touched on coaching, for the past 4 years, and I said this, I think I've coached, I think around 300 clients, like 4 years, 300 clients one-on-one. So that's not handing out audiobooks, PDFs or something like that. So that's like one-on-one coaching. And over that period of time, and I've had pretty good success with a lot of people. So now I have that in front of me and I can always say, so like, how do you know what you're talking about is correct? And I say, well, look at like these 25 clients that I completely changed the body composition. Look how stronger they got. I got videos, I got photos, I got everything as proof. So when you get that to a point, then you kind of say like, okay, maybe I can kind of feel good about something. I'm not going to say that I know everything because I obviously don't. I know when some people, I look into their results and how they achieve things, I kind of like question if I should be doing this. But then again, you kind of that is because you're comparing yourself to the very best. It's kind of like I mentioned this in one other post, is like Instagram versus reality. It's like everyone on Instagram benches 405. Everyone on Instagram pulls like 5 wheels. But like when you enter a regular gym, most people cannot squat 135 and they cannot deadlift their body weight. Like this is the reality. Let's not compare the ideal approach to what is reality. In reality, most people are built like mashed potatoes and they cannot bench their body weight. That is the reality. Now, some people are very advanced, and that some people category is starting to get bigger and bigger as time goes on because the sport is evolving, more people are getting into fitness. But at the end of the day, they're still a minority. They still like 2%. So you aren't better than 2% of the population. Oh no, what am I going to do now? So that's the thing. I recently got a client who, I shit you not, was paying for his coaching service 300 euros a month. So that equates to, give or take, $350 a month. Online coaching. $350 a month of online coaching. The dude didn't know how to do lateral raises. Like he didn't know what was that. And I saw the programming and I was like, it's like a PDF book. It's like what you can Google, like upper body workout. And it says barbell row, 4 sets of 6, dumbbell row, 3 sets of 8.
Grocery list.
Grocery list. It's exactly. It's not a program. It's an exercise selection.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at that and you see what is in reality being done, and then you kind of feel a bit better about yourself. But it takes time. That's the fundamental thing.
Yeah, man. No, that's all great points. Fuck, I could talk to you for hours, but we should probably wrap this up. I guess we could probably include this in the podcast as well, but I was kind of curious. I kind of I remember when we last talked, and I was kind of falling down some of like the biomechanics nerd rabbit hole where everyone's kind of like getting away from like squats, like deadlifts aren't good for hypertrophy and blah blah blah, like all that shit. And I've definitely kind of woken up to that. Now I'm back on like fucking just doing the basics. And you know, what are your thoughts on some of this like newer stuff that's coming out where people are trying to like pull people away from like the traditional lifts?
I'm gonna go on a rant. A couple of years ago, when at that time YouTube fitness was very new, there wasn't a lot of competition. So you could say, generally speaking, basic things which don't need a lot of fluff and puff, and people would listen to that and they would take that because there wasn't a lot of competition. People would just see that. Nowadays, everyone is a coach. Everyone is trying to compete with everyone. And in order for you to stand out, you need to find a way to stand out. Now, if you say things which everyone knows and which are objectively true, that isn't sexy, that isn't going to attract any eyeballs. But if you say something which is super, super sketchy, people are going to look at you and say like, oh, really? So people are just wanting to stand out. It's the same thing with the new diets, the new health advice. Oh, you just gotta eat meat, and like you'll raise your testosterone by 700%. Or if you just eat this raw, and it's like, no, it won't. Like, no, it won't. You can clinically prove that. You can like put people and like have them do blood work. No, it won't do anything.
No.
But it's like, it's a good way of standing out. Another name called the Liver King is a prime example of that. Like
Yeah.
the dude is literally a gimmick. He's a shtick. Like I don't like doing this. He's maybe the nicest person in the world, and some people who I've talked to say he's super chill and super nice. But the dude's a fucking clown. But he's another prime example of like he just needs to stand out. So if he says like, "Hey, listen, I train with barbells and dumbbells in a high rep range. I really worry about my calories, macros, and things of that nature. And I pin around the clock, use GH insulin, peptides, everything around that." He would just be another roided out bodybuilder. But if he says he's natural, and the reason why he's this super fucking freaky jacked dude is because he eats cow testicles and because he eats this liver and he sucks the bone marrow and performs whatever voodoo ritual on it, people are going to be like, oh, that's why. Because he's sticking out. He found his niche. And that's fundamentally it.
Good marketing. Good marketing.
Exactly. It's just marketing. And
deceptive marketing, of course.
Exactly. And something people don't know when we're on this subject, raw meat and raw testicles and things of that nature, they were encapsulated and in a supplement form, as far as I remember, in 2010. That's nothing new. I remember looking into.
Dude, silver era, golden era bodybuilders were taking a desiccated beef liver.
Exactly, it's nothing new. People like hillbillies, like in the 90s, were doing that. In 80s, were doing it. It's nothing new. People have been doing that for like millennium. It's
liver is great for you too. Like,
no, it's good. It's no one. I personally, I don't like it.
I fucking hate the taste of it. So now I just take the capsules. But I found like I don't buy Liver King's version. I buy the cheaper Amazon version. just to get it in.
but it's like, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, if people want to stand out, they want to say something that's extraordinary because that's the only way they can stand out. If they say, hey, listen, because fundamentally speaking, getting bigger and stronger is generally speaking simple. You just need to provide a stimulus for your body in a certain amount of exercises. You got to sleep, eat well, and that's it. But that doesn't sell audiobooks.
The more I've sorry to cut you off there, but the more I've gone down this path, it's like, wow, it's really just boring. You just do the same shit over and over again. And that's when you know it's the truth. Like there's no magic exercise, there's no magic diet. It's just you like the fucking basics, progressive overload, basic compound movements, some isolation work, blah, blah, blah. Like all the shit we already know, all the shit you hear every fucking day. You just need to do that consistently and work hard.
Exactly.
So
I always tell people, like, my diet is the most boring bodybuilder diet ever. Chicken, rice, eggs, and like dairy. That's it. I don't change it. I haven't changed it for years because I know what works. I know what to do if I want to lose weight, if I want to gain weight, etc. It's super conventional and super easy, but that doesn't sell. Like if I grew a beard and decided like I'm gonna create a new shtick and I'm gonna say the more tattoos you get, the more jacked you get, because the needle punctuates your fascia tissue and that allows it to grow bigger and stronger. So therefore, when you do progressive overload, you're expanding it more. So it's just how well you can market yourself. It's fundamentally like that. So don't get caught in the hype. I always tell people what has worked for decades, like bodybuilding and strength training, isn't new. Like we know what works. We know what diets work. We know what style of training works. We know what drugs work. The newest thing is SARMs and peptides. I always tell people, don't get into it. Like, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what that can do in 10 years. It's super new. It's like in the past, it's been coming out in like human development, like 15 years. Like I never tell people to jump on gear, but like, listen, test and D-ball has been out since like the 50s. Like, we know what it does. We know what to expect. We know if you take D-ball, you're probably going to get a little watery. You're probably going to get puffy. We know if you take a lot of tests, you're going to probably develop estrogen. So, but at least we know. But if you like take MK61666, what the fuck is that going to do in 10 years? Like, literally, you might get prostate cancer. Who the fuck knows? Mm-hmm. We know what works. Fundamentally, it's that simple.
Absolutely. All right, man. We'll probably wrap this up right now, but after we end the broadcast, I'd like just to show you my current program and maybe get your get your
Let's
take on
do
it.
it.
Sounds good, man. Well, just let everybody know where they can find you, and then we'll wrap this up.
Hopefully this information is going to be viable in the next 6 months.
Yeah, maybe share your website. I'll link to your website just in case.
Well, actually, my website, I haven't been using it for. I probably should restart it. I need to completely redevelop it and see what I'm going to do with it.
Fair
But
enough.
at the moment, you can find me on Instagram. That's Coach Darko AOC. So Coach DARKO AOC. You can follow my brand. One of the businesses I'm also affiliated with is Legion Wear. You can just Google it. We have our website. We have this no weak shit tank top, not a flex.
I like that.
We have this with the tank top and a lot of other gear that's basically designed for people who lift weights and who are into kind of the cooler things in life. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Obviously, my email, anabolicoutlaw@gmail.com, and that should be it. If that's viable in the next 6 months, hopefully it is.
Sounds good, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
No problem.
Yeah, peace, brother.